basis, therefore, that amongst other things is that, and I unfortunately, Roger had sent Mr. Vode. Again, we would have raised some of the other limitations. Part of the problem that you are having in South Africa, which we have argued, and we're not saying it is wrong, is the budgetary system, or the manner in which we manage budget. Please, I know you are from education, we're not complaining about education. I don't have a problem. But the problem, if in the manner in which you budget, more of your resources goes on social spending, the risk is very high that you will pump more money for good reasons on social spending, but you don't have mechanism to improve your revenue generation so that you can supply your social services. It's quite a dicey thing. That's why, with due respect to those who are in universities, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm just bringing another controversy. I asked the Minister of Economic Development, please don't say to SASCO, the EFF student guard, whatever, and the rest. I said I'm opposed to it. But I said, let's have a serious discussion. We agree with 350 benchmark that is put for parents, for them not to pay fees. But I asked, shouldn't it be conditional? To say in the developmental objectives of the state, this is where we require particular and special skills, and therefore the 350 must also be prioritized. I know now we can go and even toy for food. It's another debate for another day. But shouldn't we be talking about even prioritizing the 350? And I ask a question, what if in this 350,000 everyone does biblical studies? And I was told that at least it's better we'll have a highly religious society. Now, we are raising this, I'm raising this thing because in my view, the public must be given what is a reality. So that when you engage, you don't engage from a point, this is what should have happened, or this is what is not happening. But obviously, if one is not saying the correct thing, I will come again because many of you here, I've been to your institutions, whether it's CSIR, whether it's the University of Pretoria, many of you, and I will tell you what we have raised and said is a weakness. But one of the things is that we have got a very weak capacity when it comes to research and development. Not because we can't, that capacity, it is on the basis of what we do. It is on the basis of collaboration. Again, if you go to the Australian model, you can't buy a machine at Wits that is going to cost you 200 million. University of Pretoria, I'm not saying you do, buys the same machine. Instead of them saying, we will put our resources together, buy this machine as an area of specialization, we will then help you, collaborate with you to buy this machine. So when we want to do research on something, we know that the university or the institution that is specializing on this is this one. Now, it's like in South Africa, we're dealing with due respect, it's a very high profession, I respect it. I'm not opposed to it, I think we need it. But some researches cannot be treated as if it's a medical school, where you study medicine there, in a close proximity, the other one is offering the same. We're saying, if we're in Australia, they know how they manage their resources. In those resources that they have, in as limited as they are able to say, this is what we need to do. So if we want a research on seismic events, this is where we know we need to go. If we want to do research on how to deal with the issue of acid mine drainage, we know this is the institution that is practicing it. You don't get that kind of collaboration in South Africa. In fact, I dare say some of the institutions have even closed their research departments. I know, not universities, I said institutions. They've closed their research departments. And therefore, during the parliamentary session, which is about to end, I'll say Wednesday. The committee has considered 2 substantial independent reports on community, socio-economic and environmental issues in mining. The report paints what would say it is a bleak future. The challenges referred to are well known to the committee, and as I said, I've got no intentions to go too much, but just 2 examples one wants to make. Last year as a committee, we visited a former mining site at Mintails near Krugersdorp here in Gauteng, and the Shiva uranium mine near Matlotsane in the Northwest Province, where the environment has been wrecked by irresponsible mining. On the other hand, we had visited Exaro in Luzipo, which is a coal mine, and Delmas in Mpumalanga. Let me say, it's true, and I'll come back to this. Mining is an extraction. It's an extractionist industry. It is not the same as agriculture. Not that I'm undermining those who are from. In fact, agriculture, you see in agriculture, you can plow, take out, you plow again. In mining, you dig, you take out. It's going to be impossible, even if you can do the best, but it's going to be impossible to bring the original, because you are tampering with the soil. But as I say, you take the 2 examples. At least when we went to Exaro in Mpumalanga, it's a very good example. We can't lie. They are now have got millie fields. They plow millies. So it's working. It's possible. But obviously, again, you go to Richards Bay, the RPM, they're very good plantation system. But what they've recognized was that in the original species that they found, plant species that they found, they could not put the forestry in the same way it was. Therefore, they look for what could be a relevant one that would still work. That plantation, when you come in, you can't see the major difference. But there are very few. I can't lie, there are very few. Most of them is just compliance. The Minister of Mineral Resources call it a ticky box. They just tick what is right, what they think they are supposed to do. If we were to have a commitment that you don't have to be monitored to do what is right, then we will not have the problems that we are having. But very quickly, the mining communities that we have visited show some contrast between good performance and shattering neglect. Sometimes the mining right holder is involved, and the committee questions to the department on the timelines in ensuring that there is real compliance with the social and labor plans. Again, as I leave, I'm sure I can talk about myself. I've argued that the system of awarding mining rights and permits, I think it's got a little bit of being flawed. In many countries, even in the African continent, instead of, you see in South Africa, is first come, first serve. You apply first, you get a license because you put it first. In many of the African countries, I'm not talking even outside the borders, you make a motivation why you should be granted a license and what is it that you are going to do. And in the process, the best is the one that is chosen. If you say I'll give 51% as a foreign country, it will be 51% local, this is what we will do and so forth. Now in South Africa, this is why I said it's my personal view, please. In South Africa, we are beneficiaries of social and labor plans and a 30% demand. As if you are owning. A social and labor plan in simple terms is what has to be done for the community. So if we were to build schools, we have to build clinics, we have to make sure that we build dams and so forth. That's what the social and labor plan is about, local economic development that will leave a positive legacy for the company. It has got nothing to do with ownership, which is a different matter. So I thought it's important, and therefore, the point therefore that one is driving here is that, yes, we accept that the social and labor plans, they remain necessary, but many of the mining companies in any way don't comply. You see? This is why we said, I asked the Department of Mineral Resources, please give us a stats. Not now, at that point we limited it to mine health and safety. In mine health and safety, there are many problems that you have, or causes of fatalities. There are many other things that you have that could lead to accidents. But like I said, I met with some of the CSIR. I'm not trying to expose you here. We said they must combine. There is something, we agree, we accept science. Some of us are politicians and not scientists. There is a word that they use when we say, but people are dying in the mines because of the seismic events. They say, no, the problem with the seismic event, it cannot be predicted. I said, fine, let us not predict it, but let's make it a point that you can anticipate it can happen. Find a better word. All what we want is that you must say, when you do this, if it is the geological way that you develop your mine, tell us that if you do the mine and you begin your mine planning to go this direction, it has the potential that there is a stone that you might crack, or there is a mine next door that by the manner in which you are mining, it may be coming a little bit closer to that other mine, and by proximity, it may lead to a seismic event. But we can't lead with something that says, like, we're helpless. No, you can't predict it. So people must die. So we said, tell us how many inspectors do you have? What is their field of specialization? Where are they located? Because I can tell you now, it doesn't help to have a mine engineers that are 5 are in the Northwest, when your actual crisis could be in the gold mines, and the majority of our gold mines are in the Free State and in Gauteng. So we must check even our skills, whether by geographical location by the department, are they placed in the right place. Equally, we must look at the question of your environmental inspector, because the problem could be that the department does not have capacity. So this is one part that we thought it's important that to raise. But having said so, one issue therefore that I must raise is that the mine, if you look at some of the legacies, is that you've got what I talked about, the environmental devastations that were left, which is a historical legacy, which therefore at times has increasingly led to the cancer of illegal mining, which not just harms communities, but leads to criminal activity. You call it the Zamazamas, those who are staying in the Gauteng area. Let me tell you what happened. They have gone even beyond what you would call your derelict and ownerless mines that they are mining. In the Free State, Harmony, they can testify, and Sibanye Gold. They now, because of the network system beneath the soil, they go from the mine where it is unoccupied or closed mine to the existing operating mines. But it has gone beyond that. Whether you call it mining, you still call it mining or what. I'm sure you know 2 cases. One of them, it happened in the Free State, it ended up in Gauteng. So I assume. Where now, when you close the mines, there's something they call backfill. So when they can no longer own those mines, the disused mines, they've resorted to something else, to kidnap. They will kidnap either a spouse or a child of a security manager, and then ask for a ransom. I'm sure those who know, they read it on the papers. In Free State, they demanded 2 ounces of gold. You see? So you can't only limit the issue of Zamazamas, of illegal mining, to the activity itself. It now has a criminal element on it that goes with it. So in as much as we continue to do this, but in a nutshell, I must say that it is true that we need to do more. The problem is that there are different interests in mining. If you ask me, my mandate, unfortunately, is to do an oversight whether there is compliance with the law or not. Environment is their duty. Here are the serious challenges that are faced with mining. One side is an economic challenge, which is commodity prices. I dare say now, with the other developments of the energy crisis, these are economic factors that goes with it. The second one is that communities expect more. And you can't blame them and say, because historically, they've been looking at these things from a distance, but they've been made to be conscientized to understand that if you do mining, we must benefit. And this is why when you go through the mining charter, even when it talks on local procurement, it is not only limited to machines and other things. It says whatever material that you procure in the recurrence of business trade, let the communities be the ones that benefit. So there is an expectation in the communities. But there's a third one. The expectation goes beyond that now. The expectation says, by the way, you need to get consent. And I'm sure those who know the matter now is in court. Communities, the court says, rules say, no, I know the department is appealing. We can discuss it. Again, there, the view that I have is that if you challenge the issue on the basis of consent, I think it is a little bit awkward for me to respond on that. But if there is a need for consent, you need to understand under which regulatory framework. Because I made an example, I said, consent might be necessary. Do we understand the same meaning of consent? Does consent mean? Consent to me means everyone must agree. What if I remember when there is a discovery that, by the way, this is where I was born and I've never given consent? So rather than to be in an antagonistic manner when you deal with it, it should be in a cooperative way to say, yes, there has to be an engagement on how do we arrive and what constitutes consent. But I want to leave that. But that's the third part. The fourth one is environment. I know those who are from environment say, remember, we say on the other side, contribute to the growth of the economy. So you've got a challenge, a mandate to say you are growing the economy. On the other side, you've got these other factors that may have implications. Included there, it's not wrong, rightly so, is environment. The major parts are beginning to be protected areas. Now, if you look at major parts, if you go to the Northern Cape, you may want to grow the economy of the Northern Cape through mining. But remember, you've got a stipulated by law, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's 50, if not 50 kilometers from the square meter array. So if you grow, there is a decision that you can't go beyond this area. On the other side, if you mine, you can't mine beyond this area because it's a protected area and this is necessary. Then there is an issue that says you can do mining, but make it a point that you save one of our natural resources, which is water, because we talk about clean drinkable water. So I'm saying all these issues, when you look at them, they pose one issue. To what extent, and I won't mention somebody who said this thing, that hopefully when we get a reconfigured government, because we must concede where there are weaknesses on our side, that the biggest problem that you have is that we work like what former president, I won't mention by his name, said. He said the biggest problem is that with the current arrangement, we've got what we would call a configuration of departments. This one does something there, this one does something there. You can't find that there is a collaboration to say, in as much as we do this, this is what has to be done. So we have to pass that test. If we pass that test, in my view, it is not for me to measure whether we are succeeding or not. If we pass that test, we can then address the issue of environmental harm. We can address the issue of community beneficiation to the communities. But also we can address a very serious problem where communities feel that they are part of the activities that are being done when it happens to mining. Otherwise, if we continue in a manner that communities feel that the issue of mining is brought to them as a benefit that they are not ought to be beneficiaries, but it's a favor, then that is when we will continue to have these challenges. I was just raising these issues. Obviously, as I said, please bear with me. I'm not questioning NEMA, those who are in the Department of Environmental Affairs. I'm neither questioning, because part of the things that the Department of Mineral Resources, by the way, in the Maledu case in the Northwest, they were told, was their failure to understand the IPILRA, which is about the role that you should, the process of consultations with communities to the satisfaction that you are in compliance. So, in as much as we have your MPRDAs in the Department of Mineral Resources, there is an argument that says, make it a point in its application, it remains consistent with other forms of legislation. That's why we have met with the Human Rights Commission, and when the department was responding, we said, please, remember, the Human Rights Commission is a Chapter 9 institution. We don't want you to arrive at a point where you must go to court, whether who has got power, because the argument about recommendations is that, yes, there are recommendations, but the judicial interpretation of authority to implement, it can only rest with one institution, which is the judicial service, which is the judiciary. So we have said, if you create any law, let the law be consistent with other relevant pieces of legislation that seeks to regulate the role that communities should play. I can't say for now we are perfect. I was just raising these issues because we also need answers to say this is what we should go. Lastly, we have got no intention at this stage. I've never had a country in the world that said this is the trade we can't do, except if it's stealing or it's rhino poaching and other things. The truth of the matter is that we continue to say, come and invest in South Africa. We are ready for investment. So we've got a duty to make it a point that a person we've invited to invest must find the investment properly arranged and be able to do what it needs to do. But that should not be an investment that is going to take away what the very same communities wants to benefit. As I said, I don't think communities are fighting just to be opposed to mining. The main fight that they have is that as mining continues, it does not only leave having devastated their landscape, but also it leaves with the very same resources that they are supposed to be benefiting them. So that is the need that we say anyone who comes must be able to strike that balance. Thank you very much.